Your Grace, members of Synod, good afternoon.
Good
My name is Jeff Potter, and I'm from St. Stephen's in Maple. It's a real privilege. Thank you. Some fans today, that's great. It's a real privilege to get to start off this series of missional moments and to get to share a little bit of our story. St. Stephen's is a church plant in Maple, and as a community, we're very nearly 1 year old. But in order to tell our story properly, we have to go a little bit further back in time than that. St. Stephen's is a historic building built in 1895 and shown in this photo here from 1909. It goes without saying that St. Stephen's has deep historical roots in Maple. But in 2008, the challenges of parish ministry in changing times caught up with St. Stephen's, and a brave and faithful group of people made the very difficult decision to close the church. It was deconsecrated that same year by Bishop George Eliot, and the land was kept. And I'm told that it didn't take long for some at the Synod office to begin to imagine what a reboot might look like someday. After all, the church sits right in the middle of Vaughan, one of the biggest and fastest growing municipalities in the province. It looks very different now than in that photo, I can tell you. About 18 months ago, Canon Susan Bell took me out for lunch and pitched this crazy idea of a new church at St. Stephen's. And even though I had always said I never wanted to be a church planter, after some prayer and discussion with my wife, I somehow found myself agreeing to Susan's proposal. Her pitch really was that good. And I can honestly say that we would not be where we are now as a community without the vision, guidance, and support that she has offered from the very beginning. So I went up with my wife to have a look at St. Stephen's and to meet with Susan and Duke Vipperman. And this is what we found when we got there. A lovely, intimate church that in many ways looked like it was right out of a different era. The challenges were many and obvious. The church needed repair. It didn't have anything in it other than these pews and about 15 years of raccoon droppings in the attic. It's really not as funny as it sounds. It didn't have an altar. It didn't have any bathrooms or any running water or any people. But despite all of that, as we gathered in that church together, we could just feel the potential. So equipped with some funding from the Ministry Allocation Fund and supported by Susan Duke, Canon Dave Robinson, and Bishop Peter Fenty, my time at St. Stephen's officially began in February last year. I began by doing my best to get to know the neighborhood, visiting local coffee shops and hangouts, watching local hockey games, praying that we might start to find some people just crazy enough to want to become part of what we called our launch team. In those first few days, I was really aware that I had no idea what I was doing, none at all. So for lack of a better idea, I went down to the Diocesan archives and I read everything I could find about St. Stephen's. I noted the names and the email addresses of anyone involved in St. Stephen's that I could find, and I wrote to them, asking if they might share some of their experiences with me. In a couple of cases, I only had names. I didn't have any kind of contact information. So I like to think that I did what any normal person would do. I looked them up on Facebook. I think the technical term for this is Facebook creeping. And you probably can't read the text on that image, but this is an actual message that I sent to a couple whose names appeared in the minutes from a vestry meeting. It was a long shot, to say the least. I sent the message on March 11th last year, but I didn't get an answer until May the 7th, 2 full months later. I can still imagine the excitement that I felt getting that reply. By that point, it felt like it was coming out of the blue. All of a sudden, we had this wonderful family of 4 who were weird enough to respond to a Facebook message from a complete stranger, and who were excited to share their memories of the previous St. Stephen's, and who also were interested in helping to build something new. So alongside them, we connected with another family of 4 who had attended my previous church and happened to live right down the road from St. Stephen's. My friend, Reverend David Giffen, encouraged them to help launch something new at St. Stephen's, even though doing so would mean that they would leave the Church of the Transfiguration. They did, And so just like that, we had our first 2 families. And so we began to meet together over dinner and evening prayer, thinking and dreaming about what a new community might look like at St. Stephen's. They were joined by other people that we met as time went on, and by the end of that summer last year, our group no longer fit around our dining room table. And so as a group, we began to feel this really deep desire to be rooted in public worship. So the plan was to begin public worship on Sundays at 5 p.m., followed by dinner, a pattern that we had already begun as a launch team, and a time slot that seemed to work really well for the young families in our neighborhood. The trouble was, we hadn't really planned on beginning worship so quickly, and the church still looked like this. This seemed like a really big problem to me at the time, but not to Jennifer Keene in the bishop's office. She somehow managed to track down pretty well everything we need, but not only that, she sent her husband, Jamie, to supply the truck and the labor to pick everything up. It was really something to see that altar fly down the highway in the back of that pickup truck, I'll tell you. So as you can see, in a really tangible way, St. Stephen's is a product of support and cooperation from across the diocese. We have furnishings and linens and holy hardware and kitchen supplies from all kinds of different places, and we've been really overwhelmed by the kindness that we've been shown. As you can see, it wasn't perfect, but it really was a wonderful start. And so on October 30th last year, Bishop Peter consecrated St. Stephen's once again. I'm told it's the only time in the history of the diocese that we've deconsecrated a church, only to later consecrate it again, which is kind of nice. Public worship began once again on the first Sunday of Advent last year. And honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect. I had this vision in my mind of getting all geared up, only to have no one arrive. But as a group, our launch team was really committed to sharing their faith with other people and inviting them to take part in this new thing that was just beginning to take root at St. Stephen's. And so together, we had a wonderful Advent and Christmas. And once again, I was surprised by how well people responded to our idea to always have dinner after the service. Week by week, people stuck around, and real relationships began to develop as we ate, cleaned, and cooked together. The presence of God that we celebrate around the Lord's table spills so naturally into our life around the dinner table, and from there into our lives during the week. Week by week, we've done our best to build relationships with people in our neighborhood. We've knocked on doors, distributed flyers. We've made a point of inviting friends and neighbors and colleagues to check out this new thing that God's up to in our midst at St. Stephen's. And really, we've been amazed by the response. These pictures were taken on the Feast of the Holy Cross this year, when we had 2 confirmations, a baptism, and a really big community barbecue. It was a special joy for me personally because I got to baptize my little daughter. As a community, we've tried to make an effort to focus on really just a few central things. Learning what it means to follow Jesus in community. Worship as the foundation of community life. The real life-changing beauty of a shared meal. Honest engagement with those around us. And so we've begun to take on some simple projects around our property. We've built a community pantry that you can see here, which offers free food with no strings attached. We've taken an overgrown wooded lot behind the church and transformed it into a community garden space with room for outdoor services, concerts, and other community events. We're building relationships with our neighbors, and we're doing our best to invite them into relationship with our church and with God. St. Stephen's is a Christian community in the making. That's what it says on the sign out front of the church. That's what it says on our website. That phrase started out as a way to call St. Stephen's a church plant without using those words. But it really is how we understand ourselves. And it's come to describe something about what we aspire to be. Collectively, we are pretty surprised, astonished, and grateful to see how far we've come. But we're also very keenly aware that we're in the early days of our community life and that our church remains fragile. And as we celebrate the growth and renewal that we're experiencing, we're still working together to discern what it means for us to be church in this place. It's a process that we hope never comes to an end at least on this side of the kingdom. So thank you. Thank you for listening to our story today. Thank you for all of the support that we've received in so many forms over the last couple of years, for the ongoing prayers. We really are grateful. And we're proud to be a part of a diocese that works so diligently to support this kind of ministry. Thank you.